This dog went missing for 3 days, and returned with a bear by his side. The sun had just begun to set over the quiet valley, spilling gold across the tops of the pine trees. Walter, a widowed farmer in his late 70s, leaned on his walking stick and called out into the fading light. "Max. Max boy, where are you?" His voice echoed off the hillsides, but there was no answering bark. For years, Max had never strayed far from the farmhouse. A sturdy shepherd with a thick coat of gray and black fur, Max was Walter's shadow, following him to the barn, waiting at the porch, even lying by his bed at night. But now, for the first time in all those years, Max was gone. It had been 3 days. Walter remembered the morning the dog disappeared. Max had trotted off into the woods, nose to the ground as though he'd caught a scent of something unusual. Walter thought nothing of it. Dogs often chased rabbits or deer. Max would always come back wagging his tail. But hours passed, then a day. Now 3 sunsets had come and gone, and the field seemed empty without the steady rhythm of paws at Walter's side. Neighbors had joined the search. Lanterns swung in the night as voices carried through the forest, calling Max's name. The old man felt every minute like a weight pressing down on his chest. Maybe he wandered too far, someone said. Or maybe the wolves, another whispered. Walter clenched his jaw and shook his head. No. Max was strong. Max was smart. He would come back. But as the 3rd evening deepened into night, Walter's hope began to waver. Sitting on his porch, staring out into the darkness of the woods, he whispered a prayer into the wind. And then, just before dawn, he heard it. A bark. Faint at first, then closer. His heart leapt as he stumbled to his feet. Max was coming home. But Walter froze when he saw the silhouette that emerged from the trees. Max was there, tail wagging, eyes bright, bounding toward him. But beside the dog, keeping pace with quiet, heavy steps, was a small bear cub. And it wasn't afraid. The night before Max returned had been the longest of Walter's life. He had barely slept. Every creak of the old wooden house, every gust of wind brushing through the trees outside made him sit up, straining to hear paws on the porch. But each time, there was nothing. Just silence. By the 2nd day without Max, Walter's worry had turned to desperation. He grabbed his lantern, pulled on his boots, and began searching the forest himself. The woods were familiar. He had walked these trails as a boy, worked them as a man, and grown old among their shadows. But in those 3 days, the forest felt like a stranger. Max. Come on, boy. Where are you? His voice cracked as he pushed through brambles and ferns. He searched the riverbank where Max often chased dragonflies. Nothing. He climbed the ridge where wild berries grew. Nothing. At night, Walter called until his throat was raw, the lantern swaying in his trembling hands, his heart pounding with dread. The villagers noticed his struggle. A few kind souls brought their own dogs, joining him in the search. For hours they spread out, their voices echoing in the valley. But when the lanterns dimmed and the stars faded into dawn, there was still no trace of Max. By the 3rd day, whispers began to circle the village. Maybe the wolves got him, someone muttered. Or the mountain lions, another said, shaking their head. Walter hated those words. He refused to believe them. Max wasn't just a pet. He was family. He was all Walter had left in the world. Standing on a ridge as the sun dipped low, Walter looked out across the endless forest, his hand gripping his cane so tightly his knuckles whitened. "I'll find you, Max," he muttered. "No matter what it takes." But the truth was, Walter was running out of hope. And then on the 3rd night, just as he was about to give up, he heard the familiar sound. A bark, carried faintly on the wind. Hope surged through him like fire. He turned toward the sound, his lantern swinging. Max was coming home. But Walter could never have imagined the companion that walked beside him. The first bark was faint. The second was louder. By the 3rd, Walter's heart nearly burst in his chest. He staggered forward, lantern swaying, eyes straining against the dim light of dawn. And there he was. Max. Bounding out of the shadows, tail wagging furiously, tongue hanging out as though nothing in the world was wrong. His paws hit the ground with the steady rhythm Walter had missed so deeply. The old man nearly dropped his lantern as he stumbled to his knees, arms open wide. "Max. Oh, my boy." The shepherd leapt into his arms, pressing his head into Walter's chest, whining with joy. Tears filled the old man's eyes as he buried his face in the dog's fur. Relief, gratitude, and love flooded through him all at once. But then, Walter froze. From the edge of the trees, another figure stepped into the clearing. Small, round-eared, moving with cautious steps, its dark eyes glinting in the half-light. A bear cub. Walter's breath caught. The lantern flickered in his trembling hand. Instinct screamed at him to back away, to grab a stick, to run. Bears were dangerous, even young ones. If the mother was nearby, she could appear at any second. But Max didn't growl. He didn't bark. Instead, the dog turned and wagged his tail, running back a few steps toward the cub as if to encourage it forward. And the bear cub, to Walter's utter disbelief, followed. It was thin, its ribs faintly visible beneath matted fur. It looked tired, hungry, but not afraid. Not of Max. And strangely, not of Walter either. The old man blinked, his mind struggling to make sense of what he was seeing. His dog had been missing for 3 days. And now he was returning home not alone, but with a wild bear at his side. Walter whispered to himself, "What in God's name?" The bear cub gave a soft, almost pitiful whimper, and Max barked once, as if trying to explain something only dogs could. Walter's fear slowly gave way to something else. Curiosity, wonder, and a strange, undeniable feeling that this was not a chance encounter. The dog had left as a pet. He had returned with a companion. And Walter's life would never be the same again. Walter stood on the porch, his lantern now set aside, both hands gripping the wooden railing. Max sat proudly at his feet, tail sweeping the floorboards. The bear cub lingered just beyond the light, shuffling awkwardly, its nose twitching as though testing the air. Walter's heart pounded. Every instinct told him to send the cub away. A wild bear, near my home? It's madness. But then he saw its eyes. Not fierce. Not threatening. Just lost. Like a child searching for something it no longer had. "Max," Walter muttered, glancing down at the dog, "what have you done, boy?" Max only barked once, cheerful, then padded over to the cub. He nudged it gently with his nose before bounding back to Walter, as if saying, "He's with me. Trust me." Walter rubbed his weathered face, torn between reason and compassion. He remembered his father's old words, "Every creature that finds your door comes with a reason." With a heavy sigh, Walter stepped inside and returned with a bowl of water and scraps of bread. He set them gently on the porch. The cub hesitated, then crept forward on unsteady paws. It sniffed the food, glanced nervously at Walter, and finally began to eat. Max sat nearby like a proud guardian, tail wagging softly. Walter leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Lord help me. I must be losing my mind." That night, the cub slept curled against Max at the porch's edge, their bodies pressed together for warmth. Walter didn't chase it away. He told himself it was just for one night, just until the little creature found its strength. But as the fire in his cabin flickered low, and the sounds of the forest settled into silence, Walter knew deep down, this was no ordinary encounter. Something larger was unfolding. Something he couldn't yet understand. And for the first time in years, the old man felt that his quiet home, long haunted by loneliness, had been filled with something new. Not just a dog. Not just a bear cub. But a family. The days that followed felt like something out of a dream. Walter, who had lived alone for years with only Max for company, suddenly found himself with another mouth to feed. The bear cub, though shy at first, grew bolder each day. It would shuffle closer to the cabin, linger longer on the porch, and finally, with Max's encouragement, step across the threshold. Walter chuckled the first time it waddled into his kitchen, nose pressed to the air, searching for the scent of food. "Well now," he muttered, "looks like I've got myself a boarder." Max barked happily, as though in full agreement. The cub's presence changed everything. Mornings once quiet with only the crackle of firewood now rang with sounds of playful wrestling. Max and the cub would tumble in the yard, rolling in the grass, darting between trees like mismatched siblings. When Max dashed into the river, the cub followed clumsily, splashing about as if it too belonged to the world of dogs. Walter, sitting in his old rocking chair, would watch with folded arms. A smile, something that had grown rare on his weathered face, began to return. Yet it wasn't just play. Slowly, a bond formed. The cub followed Max everywhere, mimicking him, learning his ways. And Max, in turn, protected the cub fiercely. If a hawk circled overhead, Max barked until it veered off. If a stranger wandered too close to the cabin, Max stood tall, the cub at his side, their stances almost identical. Walter often found himself talking to both of them. "Strangest thing I ever saw," he'd mutter. "A dog and a bear, like they were born brothers." But beneath the laughter and warmth, Walter also knew the truth. Bears were not dogs. This cub was wild, born to forests and rivers, not kitchens and porches. He could see it in the way its eyes lit up when it caught the scent of pine, the way it paused at the edge of the trees, ears pricked, listening to something deeper than Walter could hear. Summer drifted on, golden and full. The three of them, the old man, the loyal dog and the orphan bear, became inseparable. Walter's lonely cabin no longer echoed with silence. It pulsed with life. Still, a quiet unease lived in Walter's heart. He knew seasons change. Cubs grow. And the wild never forgets its call. But for now, for that summer, they were together. And in that fragile, fleeting moment, Walter felt like the richest man alive. Autumn crept into the valley quietly at first, a chill in the morning air, leaves trading green for amber, and the river carrying a sharper, colder song. Walter felt it before he even admitted it. Change was coming. The bear cub was no longer so small. Its shoulders had broadened, its paws grown heavy. It no longer waddled but moved with a strength that reminded Walter of the wild it came from. Max still played with him, but their wrestling matches shook the ground now, and Walter often had to call them off before the cub's strength outmatched his loyal dog's. One evening, as Walter stacked firewood by the cabin, he noticed the cub lingering at the tree-lean. Its nose was lifted, sniffing the wind, ears pricked at sounds that no human could hear. The forest seemed to be calling it, whispering something ancient and irresistible. Max barked, running circles around his friend, urging him back toward the cabin. The cub hesitated, torn between two worlds. Walter's chest ached as he watched. He had always known this moment would come. That night, the cub did not sleep at the porch. Instead, it lay in the yard, head resting on its paws, eyes fixed on the forest. Walter sat by the window, his lantern casting a soft glow across the room, and whispered into the silence, "Don't go yet, little one. Just a little longer." But the wild waits for no man's wishes. At dawn, Walter awoke to the sound of Max whining. He stepped outside, his heart heavy before he even looked. The cub was gone. Tracks led from the yard to the edge of the trees, then vanished into the endless green. Max paced the ground, nose pressed to the earth, tail low. Walter stood in the doorway, shoulders bowed beneath the weight of loss. For weeks, he hoped. Each evening he set scraps of food on the porch, each morning he searched for tracks. But the cub did not return. The forest had claimed what was always its own. Max lay by the door often, staring into the trees, waiting for his friend. Walter would sit beside him, resting a hand on his old dog's head. "Some things," Walter whispered, "were only meant to hold for a while." Yet even as he spoke, a part of him knew, bonds like this didn't vanish. Not truly. They lingered, unseen, in the spaces between memory and hope. And though the cub was gone, the summer they shared remained. A season of laughter, of unlikely family, etched into Walter's heart forever. Time has a way of folding memories into the quiet corners of life. Seasons passed, winters came and went, and the cub became nothing more than a story Walter told by the fire. Max grew old at his side, his muzzle turning gray, his steps slower. But Walter never forgot. Not the summer of laughter, not the way the cub leaned against Max like a brother, not the silent morning when it disappeared into the forest. Some nights, when the wind rattled through the pines, he would swear he heard the cub's heavy breathing outside his window. He'd rise, open the door, but the yard was always empty. Years later, when Walter was well into his 80s, the world around him seemed smaller. His cabin leaned more, his hand shook more, and Max was long gone, buried under the old oak tree. Walter's life had returned to silence. Until the night the fire came. It was summer again, dry and unforgiving. A storm had rolled through with lightning but no rain, and the mountains erupted in flames. Walter woke coughing to smoke seeping through the cracks of his cabin. The forest, his home, his refuge, was burning. He tried to gather what little he could, but the smoke was thick, and his body was frail. His legs gave out on the porch. For the first time in years, Walter felt the shadow of death pressing close. And then, a sound. A deep guttural roar that cut through the crackle of fire. Out of the smoke, a massive shape emerged. A bear. Its eyes gleamed, its fur streaked with ash, but there was something familiar in its gaze. Walter's breath caught. His heart stuttered. No, it can't be. But it was. The cub he had raised. No longer small, no longer clumsy, but full-grown, powerful, and alive. The bear stepped toward him, lowering its head, nudging his shoulder as if urging him to stand. When Walter faltered, the bear crouched, almost bowing, until the old man could lean against its massive frame. Guided by the bear, Walter staggered through the burning woods. The flames licked the trees, the air roared with heat, but the bear did not waver. It moved with purpose, leading him down hidden paths, across the river where the fire could not follow. Hours later, when Walter finally collapsed on the far bank, safe beneath the starry sky, the bear stood over him, silent and watchful. For a long moment, their eyes met, man and beast, bound by something greater than time. Walter's lips trembled into a whisper. "I saved you once, and now you've saved me." The bear gave a low rumble, almost like a farewell. Then, with one last look, it turned and disappeared into the forest's shadows. Walter never saw it again. But from that night on, he never doubted what he had always felt. Some bonds, no matter how unlikely, are never truly broken.